I am going to be teaching you about personal financial literacy, specifically creating a budget for a variable income. So let's get started. So having a personal budget is really important for a lot of different reasons. First, it allows you to have peace of mind. It'll also allow you to plan for the future, and it allows you to save up for what's important and reach goals. So budgeting can seem kind of boring sometimes, but it does have a lot of really good uses. A variable income, which is what most of the technicians, well, all of the technicians who work for Alpine Maids have, is income which is not fixed and can vary from week to week. So if you get more hours one week, you're going to get paid more. If you get less hours the next week, you'll get paid less. So that's what it means to be on a variable income structure. In order to create a budget, we're going to go through several steps. First, we're going to start with step one, which is to calculate your base monthly expenses. So you'll see here we have fixed expenses versus variable expenses. And that just means expenses that are always exactly the same from month to month versus those that can change from month to month. And not everybody's are the same in these categories. Obviously, you know, everyone pays different amounts on their rent and car payment, etc. But also what might be fixed for some is not fixed for others. So for instance, my phone bill, these aren't my numbers, by the way, these are just made up numbers. But my phone bill is always the same every month, whereas some people's phone bill is different from month to month. So they would put that in the variable expenses column. The way you're going to calculate your expenses is to write down everything that every expense that you have on a monthly basis. So look through the last 3 months of your bank statements and see everything you spent money on and categorize those purchases. And like I said, put them into fixed expenses versus variable expenses. So for instance, if your rent is $750 a month every month, put that down. If you pay for Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or any of those kind of subscriptions, put that down on fixed expenses. Your car payment, if you have something like AAA or any other kind of membership services that you pay for, that would go here. Any loans that you pay on a regular basis, credit card payments, anything like that goes here. Also phone bill, internet, insurance, car, home insurance, car, home insurance, renter's insurance, anything like that, all that's going to go on fixed expenses. Then you have your variable expenses. So things like groceries, gas money, clothing, if you pay for gas and electric or water and trash, depending on your living situation. And then also always put a miscellaneous expenses column. And this can be categorized as, you know, oh, well, I had to buy, my kid's textbook, and that's not something I would normally spend on, so I'm not going to put it on a specific category, but these expenses do come up from time to time, right? So we put them on miscellaneous expenses. So just look back at your last 3 months of your bank statement and see kind of how much did you spend in that miscellaneous expenses category, and then write an average of that number down. Also, when you're finished with all of that, what you're going to do is total those numbers. For variable expenses, just look at, like I said, look at the last 3 months, take whatever the largest amount you spent in each of those categories is, and then round it up to the nearest, $10. Once you've done that, total those expenses, and then again, round up. And again, just round up to the nearest 100 on this. And that number, whatever it is going to give you your base monthly expenses. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. So the next thing is going to be to calculate your base monthly income. So this is how much money you make versus how much money you spent, which is what we just did. So the way that you do this on a variable income is look at your monthly income for the last 3 months. Here's an example of what I took the payroll amounts that we made as a company for these 3 months and I averaged them. So this is actually a very accurate picture of what those of you who work full-time make at this company currently. So once you look at these 3 numbers, take whatever the lowest amount of those 3 numbers is, in this case, $2,320, and then round down to the nearest 100, which gives you $2,300, and that's your base monthly income. Barring some huge event like you not being at work for 2 weeks for some reason or another, this is what you can expect to make, the minimum or base you can expect to make on a given month. Quick tip for this, if ever you get confused about rounding up and rounding down and what do I do? For expenses, always round up. For income, always round down. This way you'll get a really conservative number either way. The next step is going to be to analyze your expenses versus your income. So take your base monthly income, which we calculated at $2,300. Take your monthly expenses, which in this example we calculated at $2,000, and you're left over with $300. What you want to see is a little bit of wiggle room in your income versus your expenses. So whatever's left over, this really should be earmarked for savings, which we'll talk about later. If there is a discrepancy between the expenses and the income, so you are left with like a negative number, that means, pretty simply, you either need to reduce your monthly expenses or you need to increase your income. So step 4 is going to be make adjustments as necessary. So what you're going to see here is a pie chart of our example budget. That's this one right here. And then on the right is the ideal budget. This ideal budget, I pulled these numbers from several different sources and pulled them together. I looked at Dave Ramsey. I looked at the Every Dollar app. I looked at a podcast called The Financial Diet, and I kind of amalgamized all that information into what a lot of different sources consider the ideal budget. So this is where they think your money should be going, basically. So 40% towards rent, 15% towards food, 7% towards utilities, et cetera, et cetera. And then this budget over here is what our example budget actually did. So you'll see there's some discrepancies. You can find what percentages of your personal budget are going towards certain expense categories by dividing the amount you're spending in that category by your base monthly income. So for instance, if we look back here, we're spending $750 on rent. We divide it by our base monthly income, and the amount we come up with is about 36.2%. It's obviously rounded to make a pie chart look nice, but that's essentially where we're at. So that's how you would find those numbers. And what you can do is make your own pie chart, which you can do pretty easily in Google Sheets. And I'd be happy to show you guys if you ever wanted to know how to do this. And it'll kind of give you a visual representation of where your money is being spent, so you can make adjustments as needed. This is meant to be a guide. It should not be interpreted as the only way to budget. So this ideal budget is just a guide. So let's say, for instance, in this case, we have 13.8% of our budget goes towards savings, whereas the ideal budget says 6% is supposed to go towards savings. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as you doing a great job with your savings. So don't always think that just because you're not exactly fitting this, you're doing something wrong or bad. It should be tailored to your needs and your lifestyle. So once you've budgeted and created kind of a plan for what you're going to do, you're going to start to see that in a lot of cases, you're going to want to cut some spending because it's going to make your life easier and just generally make it easier to, get more in that savings category or whatever it is that your goals are. So here's some cost cutting strategies you can think of. The first is to cook more and eat out less. And I know this is a cliche, but it is that way for a reason. Eating out can rack up a really large bill, especially comparatively to the cost of eating in and food prepping. So, even fast food, that those small bills over time can really add up. And so some ways to deal with this are to practice making 5 or 6 dishes really well that you can easily do variations on. So, whatever kind of food you like to eat, watch some cooking channel shows, watch some YouTube videos, go to the thrift store and buy a cookbook and try to find just a few things that you can make well and practice till you get them right, so that you get excited about eating those things instead of feeling like, it's a punishment to eat them instead of going to eat out. Meal plan and or prep so that you have a plan and can stick to it rather than just winging it. Oftentimes we'll think, oh yeah, I'll definitely, make food every day this week, but we're not prepared to do so, and we don't have an idea of what we're going to do. And then all of a sudden we're eating out every single night. So that's really important. The next tip is kind of a silly one, but frozen veggies. They're just as nutritious as fresh vegetables, and they're frozen at the peak of freshness. So they're generally cheaper than fresh vegetables, but you're getting the same nutritional value. So they're a great option. Also, go with these over canned for sure. Also, in general, when you're shopping, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, name brand products and store store brand products are made and manufactured in the same places. So they're literally the same product. It's just what the packaging looks like on the outside. That's not always true. For instance, like Coke and off-brand cola are not the same thing, but frozen green beans, you're getting essentially the same thing if you buy the store brand or the off-brand or the on-brand. So make sure that you're making those smart choices where you can. The next is curb unnecessary spending. Again, it's a cliche for a reason, but it does ring true. Small unnecessary purchases like coffee or high price snacks at the gas station, they add up. So make these purchases as few and far between as you can. My next tip is thrifting. It's a great way to give items new life and save some stress on your pocketbook. Clothing, household items, sporting goods, and all sorts of things can be thrifted. And a favorite trick of mine is to go to thrift stores that are closer to more affluent neighborhoods. You can find great bargains on, name brands and high-end items there, as opposed to going to thrift stores where people don't have a lot of money in that neighborhood. There's just a lot more junk there. Next cost-cutting strategy is to find free events and pastimes. Some of the ways you can do this: Google free things to do in Denver this weekend. If you have kids, you can also Google free things to do with kids in Denver this weekend. You'll find lots of great ideas that way. 5280 always puts one out once a month. The Denver Post puts something out every week that's like basically a roundup of free things to do, so that's an option. Also Google free date ideas. There's a lot of great ideas out there for things to do with your partner or significant other, or even just a roommate. Next, go to the library, not just for books, but also for movies. They also have an app called Libby that you can use where you can download books onto your Kindle and read them for free, just like renting a book from the library, but you don't have to go anywhere. Also, last but not least, volunteer. A lot of times we end up spending money when we're bored. So put your time to good use. If you've got extra time on your hands, volunteer and help someone out. It'll make you feel good. It'll give you a sense of purpose, and it's free. Last but not least, I think probably the most important cost-cutting strategy I can give you is practice mindful consumption. It can be easy, especially in a capitalist culture like we live in, to feel like you have to always be buying something, but purchases should be meaningful and necessary. Before buying an item, consider questions like, do I need this? Can another item I own serve the same purpose as this item? Will I gain major value by bringing this item into my life? Things like that. I highly recommend reading Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She's the one who says this quote in that book, which is, the question of what you want to own is actually the question of how you want to live your life. And I've found in general that is very true for me. I think also that book can help us have perspective on what's really important in our lives. If you practice mindful consumption the way that Marie Kondo suggests you do, you'll find less and less that you need to spend money in order to feel happy and fulfilled. So I highly recommend it. And also, you can get it for free at the library or download it on your Kindle. Step 5, what to do with the surplus. So when you do have savings, in our example had a $300 surplus after all expenses. So with that $300, here's some things you can do with it. You can save for an emergency fund. Generally, experts agree that your emergency fund should be somewhere between 3 to 6 months of necessary expenses. So take those expenses that you already calculated, and you might be able to cut some of those things out there, like clothing, like Netflix subscription, stuff like that isn't really necessary to live. But regardless, even if you just did, that $2,000 number that we had earmarked already, that would mean you need to save somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000 in order to have a nest egg emergency fund for necessary expenses. And that is used for a lot of things. It's used for, sudden emergencies that you don't see coming, like, a sudden illness, or if you, lose your job, or if you, need to buy a new car all of a sudden, all sorts of reasons why you might need to use that emergency fund. But having it around will give you a lot of peace of mind. So even if you just build it up little by little over the next few years, it will help you significantly in the long run. The next thing you can do, either once you have your emergency fund or in conjunction with it, are these other 3 items, which is, up to you how you want to do that. One is to save for goals. These goals can be things like vacations, college funds, down payment on a house or a car even. So lots of things that you could be saving money for. You can also pay down your debt faster. So if any of you have debt, like student loans like I do, or a car payment, or credit cards, all of these things, you can put that surplus towards that debt. Even if you're already paying the minimum, you can pay a little bit extra, and then that debt will be relieved faster. So then you won't have to be keep paying that minimum payment as long. And lastly on this list, save for specific non-monthly needs. So these are things you don't have to do every month, but things you will need to do eventually that you need to save money for. So a good example is car maintenance. We know we're going to have to, change the tires on our car periodically. We're going to have to change the brakes and the rotors. We're going to have to change the battery. We're going to have to get the oil changed every so often. We're going to have to do lots of things to our car, right? Same if you own a house, you're going to need to save for specific, maintenance on your house. If you have a sprinkler system, it has to be blown out. If you have a water heater, it has to be inspected, right? Like these are all things that you need to save for that you don't necessarily do monthly, but do happen and come up. Some other things, gifts, around Christmas, a lot of times people find themselves scrambling to try to buy Christmas presents for their kids and stuff. But if a few months before that, you'd said, okay, every paycheck, I'm going to set aside $20 for Christmas presents. By the time Christmas comes, you have plenty of money to buy those gifts, right? And then lastly on this list is necessary trips, not vacations necessarily, but trips, you're going to have to make, like to a wedding, for instance. Saving for those items as well can be really important. Other steps you can take for your own financial well-being: 401k contributions. This is a big deal that a lot of us in this company are not taking advantage of and definitely should consider it. Some things to know are the difference between what's called a traditional and a Roth 401k. And feel free to come talk to me if you want more info about that. I'm not going to bore you with it here, but I'd be happy to walk you through, the nuances of it. Also just the basic definitions. Our company matches 50% of your contribution up to the first 3% of pay. So, for instance, if you put 3% towards a Roth 401k or a traditional, then the company is going to put 1.5% into a 401k for you as well. And that's at no cost to you. So it's totally worth it. 5% is a great starting point, and on a weekly basis amounts to very little money out of your pocket. In our example of somebody making $2,300 a month income, a 5% contribution only amounts to $28.75 per week. So it's really not that much money. And if you can afford it, I would strongly recommend you get started on it now. Another thing, start investing in small amounts. There's a lot of apps and ways you can do this. My favorite investment app is called Acorns, and it offers a spare change investing where they will round up your purchases to the nearest dollar and then use that money to invest in a chosen portfolio. And you can decide if you want it to be, low risk, low yield, or high risk, high yield, or some combination thereof. And again, if you need more guidance on this, make an appointment with me and I'm happy to discuss it with you and go over it with you. Another thing you can do is have a small amount automatically withdrawn from your W-2 on your federal taxes each paycheck. This does not gain interest, but what it will do is you'll get a refund on your taxes, or it'll go to pay your taxes and then you'll get a refund after that. So it can be a really nice way, kind of out of sight, out of mind, not have to worry about it. And then, every February you're going to be getting a little money back. So you can do as little as $5 on that. And it's really helpful in the end. Next, educate yourself on personal finance. Read as many books on finance, watch as many financial YouTube videos, and talk to as many money savvy friends as you can. Get all the information you possibly can. One of my favorite financial podcasts, and it's also a YouTube channel, is called The Financial Diet. I watch it. I listen to it on the way to work all the time. And it's really like easy, non-nuanced financial information, especially for people who are 35 and under. It's geared towards millennials. So that's a great option. There's also a lot of other different professionals who you can listen to. And again, like I said, even just ask people in your life who are doing well with their money, how they do it and what their strategies are. Everyone has a slightly different way of budgeting, and there's no right or wrong way other than, are you spending more money than you're making? That would be the only wrong way. Last but not least, try a no spend month. This can be really hard because we're so used to just, unconscious consumption. But if you make a plan to buy nothing other than absolute essentials for an entire month, it really allows you the ability to assess what you actually missed in that month and what you really can't live without moving forward. So it can be a really good strategy for kind of trying to lessen your expenses. So last but not least, manage your money. Don't let it manage you. I know money can be a really sore subject, especially for a lot of people, if you've grown up poor, or even if you had a lot of money when you were growing up and now you don't have very much. It can feel like a really insurmountable goal, but trust me when I say you can get a handle on it, and I'm always here to help in any way that I can. So now that you've done the training or listened to my little spiel on money management, go and take the quiz. It'll be at this link that's on the screen right now, but also you should have a link in the original email that you were sent with this training. And it's 10 questions. It's pretty simple. Should be able to get through it real fast. And that's it. Thanks so much.